christiangeekcentral.com. Do you like games? I like games too. I like games too. For the purposes of this content, best shall be defined as most preferred by Pater Franson when compared to a limited sample of alternatives. Hey guys, Pater Franson here from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. Wow, this was a really interesting year for me in video games. I played, a lot of different games. I'm going to talk about most of the new games that I played this year and rank them in order from 10 to 1 in terms of my best games of 2018. I'm also going to talk about my legacy game and my most thought-provoking game, so let's get to it. First, my legacy game, that's the game that I played in 2018 that I most enjoyed, but it wasn't released in 2018. And this might be a bit predictable and a little too simple, but I gotta go with last year's number 1 on my list, Ghost Recon Wildlands. I bought it really late in 2017, just started playing it in November, was really surprised at just how much I was enjoying it. I continued to enjoy this game a ton throughout 2018. It's got that Far Cry, Assassin's Creed, really that Ubisoft formula that I enjoy so much of just having an open world where you can kind of play around, experience the interactions with the NPCs and the AI, and do stealth. It's kind of like Far Cry in that you can do stealth for a little while, and then when you're ready to go guns blazing after you've thinned the ranks a little bit, you can do that. To the point where, like, I originally got it as kind of like I want something that'll give me a little bit of that Far Cry vibe that'll kind of like tide me over until Far Cry 5 comes out. And I ended up enjoying this one far more than I thought I would, as merely like something to hold me over until Far Cry comes out. I can't wait for them to release the next game in this series, so really enjoyed Ghost Recon Wildlands in 2018. Now, on to my countdown of my 10 best games of 2018. Number 10. I'm sure God of War will be number 1 on a lot of people's lists this year. Not on mine. In fact, it barely makes this list. I loved the visuals of this game. I loved the music for this game. I loved the father-son moments in this game. It was so cool that they decided to tackle that, and that video games and their developers are kind of growing up enough to have experience in the realm of fatherhood and some of these, things that people encounter a little bit, further along in life than just in their, their 20s and 30s and stuff, and to bring that into games and see them dealing with these mature, more grown-up themes, it was really cool. But for me, the skill progression was too limited. I didn't care about the non-father-son story stuff really at all. I also don't enjoy combo-based combat. I prefer like button-mapped skills and special abilities. And more than anything else by far, I hate puzzles. I just hate them. These weren't so bad, but it just kind of added on to my dislikes in a significant way. So at the end of the day, I'm not saying this is like a game that, I can't believe people like this game. I totally get why people love this game. I can see the excellence with which it was made. It's just not the game for me. Number 9. Spider-Man for PlayStation 4. Wow. I loved the fresh continuity reboot of this world of Spider-Man and learning this new version of, him and his supporting cast and the villains that he's up against and the timeline and continuity. It was cool. It was very familiar and rewarding because of my familiarity with Spider-Man, but at the same time, taking a new continuity with the story, they were able to do some fresh things, unexpected things. I really enjoyed that. It was visually just beautiful to look at, and to move around in this fictional, this video game version of New York City was really cool. The animation for the web slinging and the movement, great. Situation adaptive score was a really cool thing to see. When you would start ramping up and you're swinging and the music would kind of swell, the basic web traversal and the combat moves in this game felt fun and playful. I like the traversal-oriented sort of collect-a-thon, if you will, side missions in this game, because the traversal in this game is one of the big high points for me, and so to have the side quest based on that mechanic made them really enjoyable for the most part. Spider-Man was a little difficult to control control in smaller maneuvering for me and in some of the wall crawling. And I also felt like, even though Spider-Man isn't known for being like tough and have bullets bouncing off of him, I felt like he was damaged way too easily for me in this game, both on a mechanical level in terms of my preferences for how difficult I want a game to be and how powerful I want my protagonist to be, and also my thematic preference. I just like to have, especially superheroes, be empowered, and I felt like, Spider-Man was taking punches from bad guys, that even if the punches made contact, really shouldn't have fazed him hardly at all. I felt, ironically, more empowered in a non-superhero video game series, the Saints Row games, and also Assassin's Creed Origins, and I really wanted this game to give me that sense of empowerment as well. I don't play games for challenge, and especially when I'm playing a superhero game, I want that power fantasy. Now, I may buy a used disc of this game someday to take advantage of a free-fall van exploit that I learned about, where you can basically rack up infinite experience and stuff. It's probably been patched out by now, but if I can get the disc and then install it without having my system connected online, go and use that exploit, boost up my XP to a crazy amount, and then I can have a really laid-back open-world Spider-Man experience. So that I think I will probably do at some point, and I think I'll really enjoy this game for all the other things that were working for me. The difficulty level, even on the easiest difficulty, was just really not where I want it to be for this kind of experience. Number 8! Conan Exiles. Finally, a survival crafting game in a serious fantasy setting. I love the open-ended nature of this game and games like it. The branching crafting chains and checklists that you go about taking on as you kind of set your own agenda for the most part. The music in this game is a great callback to Conan movies. The animation is often, though, stiff or kind of janky, I guess people might say. There's also no magic in it. Like, you can't have like a proper magic class in this game. Like, can't be a wizard and stuff, and maybe that'll come at some point in an update, but I mean, I haven't seen that yet, and so that's disappointing. In fantasy worlds, I usually like to play a magic user. Also, the systems in the game, some of the crafting-related systems, sometimes are a bit obscured. At least they were when I played the game when it came out. Maybe it's been updated with some more user-friendly tutorials and stuff, I'm not sure. This game is the closest that any game has come to my dream crafting / survival game, thematically speaking. But lacking a proper magic class and being unpolished in a lot of ways takes its toll, and I do start to lose interest in this experience after a while. But I'm glad I bought it, and it's still being supported and updated, so I'm hopeful that sometime I'll return to it and we'll have the right kind of it'll have the right kind of updates to hook me in again. Number 7. Timespinner. What a cool callback to, aesthetically speaking, to Castlevania Symphony of the Night. I love those types of games that specifically are Metroidvanias, or I like to call them Symphony-likes, which are, in my mind, Metroidvanias that have an experience and loot system. So many games that go by the name Metroidvania are really just Metroid clones. I like the ones that actually are like, they have some Vania in it, some Symphony of the Night experience systems and ability systems and loot systems and stuff like that. Great retro gothic music in this game with some added variety of other musical styles, cool creature designs, as well as character and effect animations, like when she's leaping around and does that cool spin. I really enjoyed what they did with that. This game scratched my itch to explore in that sort of Metroid style. It did lack difficulty for me, even on normal, and I'm really typically bad at games that require any level of hand-eye coordination, and so I always play on the easiest difficulty. But even on normal, I found that this was a little too easy, and the newly discovered weapons that I gained throughout the game, they didn't give me any motivation to use the crafting system or upgrade to new weapons, since old weapons gained levels with me and served me just fine. I really love this style of game, so the symphony-like elements were enough to make it fun for me to play, and I do plan to return to it someday on a higher difficulty. It just didn't quite stick the landing for me on normal. Number 6! Chasm, on the other hand, did stick the landing in the ways that I wanted it to. Now, I didn't review this game because of scheduling-related stuff that I had going on, but I bought it on day one and have really enjoyed it since. What it lacks in aesthetic variety compared to Timespinner, I think it made up for me in gameplay, and specifically the loot progression system. Combat is also just challenging enough to be in my sweet spot on the easy difficulty, encouraging me to learn enemy movements to avoid their attacks, but not punishing me too bad when I screw up. And the different weapon styles swing differently, demanding that I think carefully about which weapons I'll use, rather than just automatically using a weapon I find that does more damage than the one I'm currently using. It's not groundbreaking and would understandably be lost amidst the swarm of Metroidvanias we've been getting, but the subcategory of Metroidvania that I like to call Symphony-like, again, which includes that XP and loot grinding type of system, those are far more rare, and so even a good but not great game in that genre, like Chasm, is one I gladly welcome to my game library. Number 5. Boom! Mother trucker! Dragon Quest 11. Man, I'd really been waiting for this game, anticipating it. I had mixed feelings, though, in my review of the first 6 hours of the game. The enemies, compared to my history playing the Dragon Quest games, they just felt too easy, and the MIDI soundtrack was really, for me, a downgrade from the PlayStation 2 release in America of Dragon Quest VIII, so that was disappointing, but the heart of Dragon Quest was absolutely there. So about 12 hours in, with the challenge level still being too easy, I made the tough choice to start over, with the Draconian Quest setting for stronger monsters turned on. The Draconian Quest options are like these difficulty settings that can only be turned on at the beginning of a new game. But now that I've done that and started over, I've nearly caught up to where I left off. Now it's the Dragon Quest I know and love. Healing resources feel finite again, and my combat choices, while not too complex or brain-burning at all, they really matter. In fact, live streaming this game gets me in trouble a lot. I normally dislike bright, cute anime aesthetics and things, but I've been with this series long enough that it's grown on me as sort of a rare exception, though I definitely keep the voice acting turned off in this game. Yikes. The fast-paced, turn-based combat, which, Dragon Quest doesn't indulge in lengthy combat animations, which makes that, somewhat paradoxical thing possible of having both a fast-paced combat system that is also turn-based. And it's just complex enough to engage me without being too heavy for me strategically at the end of a workday. I love finding new areas or dungeons and just grinding it out, seeing how far I can clear out a dungeon before I have to turn back to camp to heal up again. The satisfaction of getting stronger and holding my own in fights that once nearly killed me is so satisfying. And the new quest marker system ensures that I never get lost or forget what I was doing after a prolonged break from the game, and it allows me to skip all those cheesy NPC dialogue exchanges that are not vital to moving forward. This is pure turn-based JRPG enjoyment that lets me skip a lot of the aesthetic elements in JRPGs I no longer have any patience for, and I love it. Number 4. Far Cry 5. The core gameplay here is that awesome Far Cry goodness I've enjoyed since Far Cry 3, and it even brings back some of the chaos and intensity that I enjoyed from Far Cry 2. I love that Ubisoft-style open-world collectathon. I love open-world first-person shooting with the ability to grind for experience or cash that lets me upgrade and compensate for my weaknesses as a player. I love the added vehicle emphasis in this installment of the franchise, and the decreased animal attacks, which sometimes freaked me out a little too much. It's more Far Cry, and I really love Far Cry, so this just naturally goes pretty high on my list, but it falls short for me in how it interrupts my open world playing and forces story missions on me. It also has a few insta-fail missions, usually those forced story missions, and game regions lose all the fun chaos of the cult members, left feeling quiet and empty after you beat the game. The only option to get that chaos of the cult members back in the open world is to go to the New Game Plus option. Currently I'm doing that, and I'm avoiding killing like the last cult member at outposts so I can keep playing the outposts over and over again, but I still get interrupted by the story missions. I'm just thinking, man, Ubisoft, just let me play and collect in this crazy chaotic sandbox. They've also gated user-created maps behind the PlayStation Plus service on PlayStation 4, which they did not do in Far Cry 4, and I'm honestly bummed about that. I love this gameplay, but Ubisoft took a small step back in giving me the kind of freedom that I really want to have with it. So hopefully, with the next Far Cry game, we'll see them move more in the direction of openness and flexibility and choices for the player and less channeling and funneling. Number 3! Assassin's Creed Odyssey. Like Far Cry, this series, especially since Assassin's Creed Origins, gives me open world gameplay that I love. I'm only 13 hours into this game right now, but from the start it's giving me that same Origins style gameplay I grew to love so much during 2018. Ubisoft just kind of knows how to make worlds I love to move around and do stuff in. The visuals and animations, and often especially the sound design, just kind of suck me in atmospherically. The combat is also forgiving and the missions very open, with far fewer insta-fail scenarios than past Ubisoft games so far. The simple fun of sneaking in and clearing out as many enemies as I can before starting all-out combat is so enjoyable to me. I will say I don't want anything to do with the naval combat in this game. I've never enjoyed that in this series, but what little I've been forced to do in Odyssey has been doable and fairly brief. I also wish they would allow me to disable auto-leveling for the enemies, as I like the option to grind and become far more powerful than the enemies I'm facing. But the loot and skill systems seem to still allow me to compensate for some of that. Right now, Assassin's Creed Odyssey is like my ultimate chill-out game for when I don't want a challenge. I just want to feel powerful and sneaky and run around collecting things and marking off checklists in a beautiful open world. Number 2. No Man's Sky Next. Wow. This was running neck and neck with my number 1 for about the last, well, it's 4 to 6 months, whenever the last update for it was. In 2016, I reviewed the first 5 hours of No Man's Sky, and I enjoyed it for what it was. But there came a point 10 hours in when making my own goals and the cycle of exploring, refueling, and exploring some more, it just wasn't enough to keep me in for the long haul. I needed a carrot, a simple quest system dangling in front of me and being told to go to blank and then come back and get a reward for it. With each major update of this game, I put a little more time into the game, up through the update called Atlas Rises, which added a simple quest system, but had some bugs that made them impossible for me to finish, so I just I'm going to put this down and let them fix it for a while. I'll come back to it someday. I ended up not coming back to it until the update called Next, but up to that point, until Next had been released, I put a total of 60 hours into No Man's Sky, and I felt good about the value that I got out of that purchase. But then, in the summer of 2018, they released the update called Next, which upgraded the visuals, introduced third-person gameplay, and a bunch of other changes, which included an overhaul of the crafting ingredients. It felt in so many ways like a sequel to the game I played in 2016. Arguably, if it was, it would be considered way too similar to the original game, but still different enough that I could imagine this being a sequel. And it also released on Xbox One for the first time this year. So even though I'm using a PlayStation, those elements combined made me feel justified in comparing it to other 2018 game releases for this list. It nearly came away as my game of the year. Although I'd put in 60 hours already, the next update made the game finally just click with me somehow like it never had before. I'd already grown to appreciate the crafting elements, but now the survival aspects were really becoming fun to me for reasons I can't explain. The Foley effects also saw some upgrades, adding the crunchy boots I love to hear done well in games when I'm walking around with my character. The quest system works, and the ability to find and repair starships to trade in makes me feel like some kind of interstellar car collector and car restorer. I just love having that chore in front of me. And the chill groove of mining and crafting was perfect for listening to podcasts or even certain kinds of TV shows. I loved it enough that after putting in 60 hours before Next was released, I then put in 120 hours more for a current total of 180 hours into this game. That is almost Skyrim levels of value for me. And while I have stepped away from it for the time being, Hello Games just keeps updating this game, and I have a lot of confidence that in 2019 I'm going to be back in No Man's Sky having a great time for hours and hours more. And yet, it's not quite my game of the year. Number 1! Monster Hunter World. Once again this year, I am surprised at what my number 1 game of the year ended up being. Last January, I reviewed the first 5 hours of this game. Monster Hunter World felt like a risky purchase for me. I wasn't interested in playing a game with obscured systems so complex that you're expected to either beat your head against a wall in trial and error combat, or team up with friends, because I'm not interested in online play, or you're expected to go online constantly to read wikis, and that's what I'd heard the Monster Hunter series was. And even though a lot of changes were made to increase the game's accessibility, Monster Hunter World still required me to get online and read wiki pages to avoid multiple trial and error mission failures. But No Man's Sky had kind of helped me develop a tolerance for using wikis, and the increasingly deep gear and crafting systems in this game pulled me into the grind like some kind of bewitching music. I have complaints that longtime Monster Hunter fans probably don't have at all. They might love what I dislike, but that doesn't change how I feel, and those complaints represent significant downsides to my experience. I don't like heavily timing-oriented combat. The weapons in this game have long animations between the time you press the button and the time they hit the monster. I use the sword and shield weapon combo, which is possibly the quickest to respond and easiest weapon type to use, and I still wish there was less delay. I don't like combo-based combat, which this game features a lot of. Just let me map special attacks to a single button press, or 2 buttons simultaneously at most, not some sequence of button presses I have to perform. I wish I could pause my game without using the exploit of suspending it by launching a Blu-ray video. I've got a family and other things to do now and then, Capcom. I wish I could grind loot to become as powerful as I want before taking on fights. But if they didn't limit my capacity to upgrade myself based on where I'm at in the campaign, there are certain kind of like upgrade options that are gated until you make, your way to certain points in the story. If they didn't do that, then I have to admit I wouldn't have to learn every system at my disposal, and so I would miss out on that fun illusion of feeling smart when I thoroughly prepare for an epic fight. Which leads to the first reason why I love this game, and the first reason why all those significant complaints fade into the background by comparison. The first reason I've put 230 hours into this game and suspect I'm nowhere near done with it is, number 1, the epic fights. This game is filled with epic battles. Every time I fight a new monster is like a cinematic event. This game has almost no story. I don't want story in most games. I go to books and movies for that because storytelling in games almost never connects with me. But these fights, they are stories in themselves. What other games have to carefully script to achieve in dramatic action, Monster Hunter World does for me through the strength, size, animation, and AI of these massive beasts. They feel like living creatures with recognizable behaviors rather than cold programming with predictable patterns. I'm fascinated by them and love interacting with them, even if that interaction has to be combat. I can't help but wonder if a game like this is kind of unknowingly made in pursuit of our intended role as benevolent rulers of the animal world, before the fall left humanity as predatory conquerors of the animal world instead. Like a comic that once showed Superman playfully wrestling a lion, this game makes me want to speculate about what large creatures we might be able to wrestle and play with in the new creation. The second reason I love this game is the massive, beautiful environments that reward exploration. This isn't an open world game, but each biome is huge, with multiple levels and secret nooks and crannies to discover. 230 hours in, and I still don't completely know my way around these complex maps. And with the help of my trusty fireflies guiding me, I don't have to. I can just enjoy my surroundings and the pleasure of still finding surprises now and then. Number 3, the character and armor designs. Yes, there are cringeworthy, for me anyway, cute anime cats everywhere, including my valuable AI sidekick, but everything else has this great balance between over-the-top and groundedness in its design. And even my cat's sidekick gets covered up in armor so I don't have to see his ridiculous anthropomorphic face. I also noticed during character creation that one female model's face looks a bit like my wife, so I took my customization options in that direction the rest of the way, and I've been watching my wife kick monster butt with her dear childhood cat Abby all year long. The fourth reason I love this game is the sound design. That the music goes from tranquil to adventurous to heart-poundingly intense. The boots are crunchy, the plants give off a dull snap as I pick them, and all the menu buttons do something great in my ears that I can't describe. Not to mention the amazing growls, clicks, and roars of the beasts I battle, and the voice acting gives me the option to turn it off, which is just awesome. Sorry folks, I'm not a fan of anime style acting. And the fifth and final major reason that I love Monster Hunter World is the grind. Possibly the most enjoyable part for me, that feeling when you start out overmatched but then patiently take on lesser challenges to build up your stats. I can feel my defense and attacks getting stronger. I know that every flower I pick or easier monster I fight repeatedly gets me a step closer to taking on the next big bad. Now, I play this game solo, and in numerous reviews and videos about this game, I heard about the difficulty spikes that certain monsters represent. They warned, if you don't learn the combat in this game, you won't get far. Button mashing will only work for so long. You can't button mash against Anjanath. And then I button mashed Anjanath to death. Then Raytheon, Legiana, Diablos. Oh no, well, Elder Dragons. Elder Dragons are a whole different story. You can't button mash against Nergigante. If you're like me and have to resort to button mashing, but you've avoided this game because you've heard the combat is too hard and too complex, I'm telling you right now that with time invested in the grind, which I have loved every minute of, I have been button mashing my way through this game. And with only 3 missions left to finish the campaign, I have no reason to think I can't button mash my way to the end. Now, it's not blind button mashing. I still try to dodge and regularly use potions and, the other things at my disposal. I'm still fighting as smartly as I can, but I only pull off combos by accident as I switch between light and heavy attacks. And where my reflexes fail me, the grind has more than made up for it. I've never failed a single campaign mission and can count on one hand the times I've been knocked out. Now, post-game content may be a different story. I'm not quite done with the game yet, but even if it is a different story, I will have gotten so much enjoyment out of this game, so much playtime out of it, I'll be content to let it go after rolling the credits. In fact, I've enjoyed this game so much that I took the plunge during a sale recently and bought Monster Hunter Freedom Unite to play on my Vita and PlayStation TV. It's not near as user-friendly, but having been through Monster Hunter World, I feel like I'm willing to take the risk and try other games in the series. And that's one of the things that makes this such a remarkable game experience for me this year. Not since BioShock have I played a game that I felt like broadened my potential gaming interests like this one has. It opened up to me an entirely new genre, the monster hunting genre, including the Monster Hunter series and the various imitators of that series. That's a type of game I thought I'd never be interested in, that sounded so convoluted and repetitive I couldn't imagine enjoying it. But the fact is that this is pure gameplay of a kind that I love, with an aesthetic wrapping of environments and creatures that I'm captivated by. Against all likelihood, this game released last January and has maintained its freshness for me against competitors all year long. I love Monster Hunter World. Finally and briefly, I want to talk about the most thought-provoking game for me this year, and that was Timespinner, which was also on my top 10 list. setting aside the gameplay and just looking at the themes and stuff, I was disappointed at how the message was delivered, and I disagree with the views on human sexuality promoted in this game. But I think this game is a great opportunity to gain insight and develop sympathy for the situation that those in the LGBT community find themselves. And I think it also can serve as a cautionary example for us as Christians how not to go about promoting our own messages. I think it will not have the effect it intends on those who disagree with its message, but Christians can still find a different, unintended value in hearing the expression of that message as it's delivered in Timespinner. For more of my thoughts on that, you can check out my review of Timespinner on youtube.com/christiangeekcentral. That's it for my best games of 2018. I'd love to hear about your favorites and why you love them in the comments below, and then I hope you'll join us over at christiangeekcentral.com as we continue to geek out and seek the truth.
christiangeekcentral.com